Sisters, let's talk.
Hey girls, how y'all doing? Welcome to Sistah Talks. My name is
Good.
Lisa, and I'm a pastor, and I am a host of Sistah Talks, and this is my beautiful daughter Alexa. She is my co-host. Yes, indeed. And we have some beautiful ladies that's here joining us today. I have Lisa Ray coming all the way from New York City. I have Sharonda Watson from the ATL. And we're so blessed and we're so excited to have you ladies on the show today. So, ladies, we're going to be talking about a topic today. We're going to have a conversation about a topic today that can be very sensitive to most, and a topic that brings tears and rejoicing, and a topic that can even stop people dead in their tracks, male and female. We're talking about the topic of caregiving. Now, when people hear that word caregiving, y'all, they mostly thinking about the person, the child that is caring for an elderly person, whether they're caring for their mother or their father that has gone up in age, and or they have a disabled child, and those all fit under that umbrella of caregiving. But you ladies are going to talk about other aspects of caregiving that we might not even consider, even caregiving themselves, because we have issues and stuff that we're carrying. We have to take care of ourselves, and we want to talk about today what that looks like. And so for me, I have to be honest with you. And the first time that I even thought about the concept of caregiving was through Lisa. And for those of you who don't know already, Lisa is she is my oldest friend, and she's my sister. And so I had to watch her walk through caregiving her mom and her dad, and also now herself. And so I have to admit also, even to Lisa, I probably never told you this, Lee, is that I know there's been times where I've been just insensitive or just disconnected, or because I didn't understand. And I kind of thought that was just a natural occurrence in people's lives. And I had no idea the impact that it has on a personal life. I had no idea. I thought that, okay, when I get older, my mom gets older, my dad, he went home to be with the Lord, but he got older, that, okay, I'll come to that point when I come to it. But sometimes caregiving steps on your front door. It just knocks at your front door, if you will. And it comes at the most unexpected times. And so watching Lisa, and even going through Lisa's frustrations about not feeling well supported and not feeling even seen or heard. And Lisa has multiple levels. I'm just talking my personal observation and being in a relationship with her, multiple layers, not only caregiving for her mother and her father, but also her sister and her brother and herself now. And Liana, Liana has a unique situation today, everyone, because she just lost her daddy. Her daddy just went home to be with the Lord a couple of weeks ago. And so she was caregiving him and doing the best that she could in that role. And then she had to deal with the disconnect and the challenge of saying goodbye, disconnecting herself from being a caregiver role and now saying goodbye. And we're going to talk to Lee about how she feels now. She's actually working through it right now. And then Sharonda, many people, we know Sharonda. Many people have parents or people in their family, grandparents or whatever, that's dealing with memory issues. Yeah. Alzheimer's, dementia, and so on and so forth. And so, you're going to be able to give us, just some insight on what that looks like. And Sharonda has a very unique position, because Sharonda is a minister in the military, and Sharonda has walked through soldiers having PTSD. And so somebody told me recently that being a caregiver there comes with a level of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That there is a disorder and there is stress, and that's traumatic on a person's personal life that impacts them. And so, Sharonda, you'll be able to help us to understand how being a caregiver just personally impacts our life and causes stress and anxiety and trauma in our lives, if you will. And so Lexi, I'll turn it over to you to kind of get the conversation going today.
Yes, ma'am. So ladies, as my mom just mentioned, kind of gave us a brief introduction of you guys' story. And we'll delve into, what the specifics of that look like as the show goes on. But I just want to throw a question out there to you ladies. And each of you guys can answer however you guys feel the need to. But I think we should start by asking you each, what does the term caregiver mean to you? So we'll start with Liana. What does that term mean to you, and how does that apply to your specific situation?
Yes, Lee.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well,
going into it, I wouldn't have been able to define it, but I think that being a caregiver is a really broad. It's a really broad term. I mean, it means maybe you're the person who's you're actually providing direct care and support for somebody. You could also be the person that's overseeing the care by professionals, and that is still quite a burden. I mean, it's a responsibility because in some cases you're making decisions and you're helping them with things they themselves decide. So it's, for me, I would see it as a really broad. It can be a range of things, and I think that really at its core, I think that caregiving is supporting somebody in whatever that need is when they can't do it for themselves.
So what would you say, Lee, to somebody that would say to you, and even you, Lisa, these have experienced this too, well, you're not really a caregiver in a truest sense because maybe your mom was in the hospital or your dad was in hospice care or whatever, and you really didn't have to do the everyday, day in and day out with them. So Lee, can you speak into that? And then Lisa, you talk about that, because I think it's a misconception there that if you're not doing it every single day, 24 hours a day, then you truly are not a caregiver.
Yes, I'd be glad to speak to that. I mean, I didn't understand caregiving before walking through it myself. So like you, I didn't always appreciate what people were going through when they were caregivers. But it can be very stressful because even if you turn over care, like medical care and day-to-day support, to a professional like facility, hospice facility, a lot of times you're helping to make the decision which facility. You're trying to make judgments about, what services and what types of support do they need? Is this the right thing? You may be working out finances. Maybe the person's not in a position to handle, and you may be trying to execute the necessary documents, whether it's a power of attorney. There's so many things that have to happen, even if you turn over care to someone, and then you still have to be involved. You cannot step back. So it's something where you still want to advocate for your loved one. You still want to just help the professionals. Sometimes there's not a continuity. Like maybe you have shifts, medical staff, and there's some information that you can provide to help them understand how to care for the person. That maybe, so there are all these opportunities to still be very directly involved. Direct caregiver.
Yeah. So Lisa, one of the things that I saw you walk through, and I never really understood the depth of the difficulty for you, was that you are a primary caregiver of so many people at the same time that it was just like mind-boggling. And what I mean is that you had your parents that had their health issues, and you had to manage that, and then you had to manage your siblings that had their own areas of weakness with regards to mental health issues or whatever, and you had to carry all of that. So we kind of talked to us about, what does that mean? Has that meant for you?
Well, I would say this. My caregiving experience started when I was a teenager. And Lisa, you know that. My mom and my mother had separated and eventually got divorced, and my mom was in Spanish Harlem taking care of my grandmother, and Walita. And when she passed, I noticed my mom had several nervous breakdowns, and she ended up. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And for me, all I remember is how much she doted on us as children. And, my mom was she was such a beautiful, sweet person. And when I saw her going through talking to herself, I was challenged by that. And I was like, at the time she was living on 112th and Lexington in El Barrio. And I was working on 53rd and Lexington in finance. And I would take the train during lunch to see her just to make sure she was okay, because at one point her rent wasn't being paid and I didn't know what she was doing with her money. So I was into my investigation mode, I guess being a cop's daughter. you naturally become nosy. I don't know, for lack of a better word. But one day, I would go see her, and I would buy her groceries every couple of weeks and visit her. I made sure her phone was on, and sometimes she would disconnect the phone, and I couldn't go to sleep until I spoke with her. So the phone would just ring and ring and ring. So I'd get up out of my bed at 11 o'clock at night and drive to Spanish Harlem to get into her apartment and go in her room and see that she turned the ringer off. So for me, it was trying to hold on to my mother I had as a little girl, the experience I had, the wonderful experience I had as a little girl. I was trying to hold on to that with her. So when I would go there and I would let her cook for me, and she'd be talking to herself, and I'd go, "Who are you talking to? Who are you talking to?" And I would go, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." And I would say mommy until she would acknowledge me. So I think for me, I have such a strong personality that I was going to speak to my mother. Somehow, if it took a little while, she was going to acknowledge me, and she was going to know that she was speaking to her youngest daughter, and we would be able to talk. I would be able to connect with her. So I'm a little, maybe aggressive for some people, assertive, pushy, call it what you want. But I was determined to keep that relationship with my mom, that I remember as a little girl. It was a difficult thing. And then Spanish Harlem, and still living at home with Dad. I was living with my father, my sister, and my brother was in the military, eventually came home. But I was looking to get an apartment, so I would move back to Queens to live with me. And I did that, and she didn't want to live with me. So I just gave her keys to come whenever she pleased. My mother, my dad got sick in, I want to say 1993. And then so that was December 28th, 1993. He ended up in the hospital. This was probably like his third or fourth time in the hospital. And I went through this before, like, it was a snowstorm. I was like, "It's okay. All right, God, it's okay." And I'm praying the whole time driving through, wiping the window with my hand, all kinds of stuff, just driving to the hospital. And when I saw him that time, I saw that it was different than the times before. I could see it in his face that he had aged, and there was something else that was going on, more detrimental, more serious than before. Mm-hmm. My dad ended up being diagnosed with lung cancer. And, I am the type of person, I go immediately into what to do. We got to get a second opinion. We got to get him the best care. We got to have a family meeting. I was always that person. So he got a second opinion, and the doctor said, "Don't touch him," because there was a mass on his lung the size of an orange. And he already had chronic emphysema. So he was functioning on less than 25% of his own lungs. He was not a candidate for an operation. Leave him alone. So that's what we did. Mm-hmm. And then he comes home January. So he's in the hospital from December to January. He comes home January 25th. My sister was taking really good care of him in terms of, because she lived with him. So she cooked his food. And, Daddy was pretty pushy. You couldn't tell him anything. And he had a walker. He was like, "I'm not using that thing. And so my sister told me that. I said, "Okay, it's all about how you say it to him." So I went there. I said, "Dad, you know what? Listen, I got this walker." I said, "If you need it, it's going to be right here. You use it, okay? If you need it, I'm going to leave it right here." That night, Maria said he took the walker and walked into the living room. You got to, he's a strong man, and he's always taking care of everybody. So it couldn't have been something that, "Here, you use this." He just kind of suggested you use it, and I left it there, and he did use it. The next month, my mother went into the hospital. Now, my mother and father are 16 years apart, and my mother for a different reason, mental health. She went in the hospital from February. My father's not getting any better. From February to April. She comes home in April. I explained to her that my father was diagnosed with lung cancer. My father, I had a big show because I was a promoter. So I had a big show at the Jacob Javits Center. And I remember I said, "I'm not doing anything," because my father had to get a trach put in, a tracheotomy. And I wasn't doing anything that day. I had to make sure that he was okay. So I went to the hospital. He was okay. Anyway, long story short, a shorter story longer. I brought the family together again to support my father, including my mother. And my father passed July 4th, 1994. So it was like back and forth with my parents, one after the other. One was in the hospital in Queens, one was in the hospital in Manhattan. And I just went into, what do we have to do to make their lives, for my mother to make her happy, to want to live again, and, for the time that my father was there, I was like, I'm not going to look at my father like he's dying. I'm going to appreciate every moment that I have him. He's alive. And that was how I dealt with that at that particular time. And that was, it wasn't a lot from my dad, because he always had it together and he was always strong, but there was a time he needed me. And from my mom, it was the beginning of some highs and lows. It was low and then it came up. And then, it was good for a while. And then it got serious over the last few years until she passed. December 22nd will make a year since my mom had gone home to be with the Lord. So a lot.
It is. So Sharonda, can you talk to us? You have a mom that lives with you and your husband and your children.
Yep.
And has she been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease?
Dementia.
Dementia. You tell us, I don't know what the difference is. What's the difference?
So, and hopefully I get it correct. Dementia or Alzheimer is the large, umbrella, let's say. And then there are various forms of dementia that come under that. Yeah. Like a Lewy body dementia, I think they call one. So some is that directly in the brain, you're not receiving signal. Some there's a blockage. So there are different levels and types that fall under that large umbrella of Alzheimer's. And then there are different types of dementia. They have not typed her yet. It doesn't seem to be because of a blockage. Hers really is stemming from just old age. My mother's 84, and I'm the youngest of her 3 children, but I was the latter life child. So I was 40 when my mother was born.
Right.
So I am truly that sandwich generation where I'm still raising children and taking care of a parent. So that's how we got there. And I'm from New Jersey as well. Yeah. I'm from up north, and we moved her from New Jersey down to Georgia February of last year. And thankfully, it was a couple of weeks before the pandemic, before. Yeah.
So could you maybe tell me, because I've said this mistakenly, and Lee, I don't know if I've ever said this to you, and if I did, I was totally out of order. What would you say to people that just be like, well, why don't you just put them in a nursing home? Why are you going through this? So Lisa, could you speak to why not make that decision?
Well, for me, I love. My mom gave me so much love, and that's what I have in my heart. And as much as I am misunderstood as a person, because I've had to be strong, because life is not a joke. Raising a child on my own, there's nothing funny. Now, I have a great humor, especially, promoting comedy for so many years. Love to laugh, but I am a serious person because I've had to make so many decisions for so many people, including myself. And whatever decision I made, whether it was the best decision or the worst decision, I had to make it work. So when it came to, there was never, first of all, I remember when my mother was like, don't ever put me in a, my mother took care of her mother.
Right.
And I feel like if you're in a situation, you yourself, you have something and you're capable, you should be willing to help someone else. And who not better than your parents? So my mom, there was no question. I was already preparing. I went down to Georgia looking for a home. I was trying to get my mother to move with me. I was making the bottom floor hers. I picked out a place and everything. She didn't want to move. I mean, I was already preparing in my mind that my mother was going to live with me, whatever. It didn't matter. my happiness in terms of what would make me happy was to see my mother smile, to see my mother have some happiness in her life again. So forget about me. I didn't care about myself, so much so that even when I became afflicted with my own illness, I didn't have a chance to even focus on that. Yeah. I'm just starting to focus on my own illness. It was all about my mother, whatever she needed. And the sacrifice, whether it was financially, upkeeping the home, the home was that I was raised in was assigned over to me, and making sure the taxes are paid, making sure everything is paid. So much so that, like, when my son was young, and he's 24 now, he was maybe 12 years old, he said, my mother takes care of 2 households. I did what I needed to do because I love her. And they tried to say to me, the doctors, I'm telling you, the doctors will tell you in a minute, the devil is a liar. I am sorry. I am not receiving that. We're going to do what we need to do as a family, whatever it takes. My mother was in her right mind. Praise the Lord. God healed her mind. Thank you, Jesus. He did. So with that being said, my mom was clear on what she wanted, and whatever and even if she said, put me in there, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't. There's no way. I don't care. If I had to work at McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever I had to work, I would have done that for her to have a good quality of life at the end of her years. She deserved that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Liana, I know that you had your dad. Your dad was an independent guy. He lived on his own in Alabama, and you lived here in Atlanta. And so, you had to make the transition of bringing your dad closer to you. And so he had to go into hospice care. So you're an attorney, and you have to go to work. And I know everybody has to go to work, and they have to make hard decisions about what their care looks like. And I remember you and I having a conversation, Liana, about wanting to bring him home, and what would that look like? And could you provide care for him at home, and then still work and maintain your household? So to have these conversations with your father about that, and what did that look like?
My father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So we knew that the doctors were saying his time was limited. And what we didn't know is how much quality of life he would have before and so my father, like you said, was really strong. And so he himself was I use the term caregiver broadly, and maybe more broadly than, someone who were defining it, but my dad himself was a caregiver for someone. He in the process of taking chemo, just trying to have a little bit more time, was going to see someone in a nursing home, was handling that person's financial matters, was a trustee. So my father was very independent, and it was very hard for him to sort of relinquish the independence and sort of move into a place where he was receiving care and he couldn't do things for himself. So we had conversations, but what I did was let him know that it was his choice. Like I would lay out the options as I understood them, because I wanted him to participate in it. And I wanted him, to the extent he was able, to make, his own judgments. And I would support him, even if, sometimes I was thinking, I don't know how we're going to do that. I don't, like, my father wanted to, even, he wanted to do things that were just not practical with what we knew, but still, I would explore it. I would make phone calls. I would call friends. I would call my dad's church. I would call wherever to find if there was a way, because there might be a way. So, but I just like Lisa, just like Sharonda, it's like you want your parents' quality of life to be good, and you really put everything aside to try to give them, these people who raised you and who deserve to be honored in their later years and in their last. You want to do the best for them that you can, and so it does sometimes mean. Sometimes it means making the decision that someone else has to take care of them. I had my father home with me. I went and stayed with my father to try to care for him. It was more than I was capable of doing. Not because of will, but just because practically speaking, I couldn't do it. I mean, there was no, he needed to be helped physically, to, you know, and things like that I couldn't do. And I knew, and frankly, my dad was suffering a little bit he was struggling a little bit under my care. I mean, we did okay at first, but it wasn't best. So I had to make the decision to put him in a facility that I really think was the best option at the time. And ultimately, I think I'm grateful, but it was hard. You know, it was hard because, you know, you feel like you should be able to do more and better for your parents when it comes to, like, you know, you should, but I couldn't. So what I did was I kind of alternated. I had him home with me for a set of days or a week, and then he would go back, you know, because I realized that, that was the only way I could, sort of survive it, because I knew that during the time I was taking care of him and staying with him, I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't eating very much. I mean, everything of mine was being neglected. My bills were late. I just wasn't on top of my own. And it's almost like, you know, what they say, you know, when you're on a plane, you know, you have to put your own oxygen mask first to help others. And lastly, my father, he was concerned about me. He would always talk about, Liana, I don't want you to, you know, run yourself into the ground. And I knew that he meant that. And so I had to sometimes making decisions that maybe he didn't like the particular decision, but I knew it was necessary, because ultimately I knew my dad didn't want to see me go down, you know, while I'm trying to care for him. So it's never easy, but it's sort of like you do the best you can as you go, and you know what your intentions are, you know, and they know you love.
Yeah. I was going to add, if it's okay, I am a military chaplain, but also a hospital chaplain. And I have to sit with families a lot when they're making that decision of, you know, do we do hospice, palliative care, which is an end of life care, or like you mentioned, Leanna, just sometimes it's difficult. And you have to figure out what's the best care. And I think that helps patients. And I know I've had this conversation with my siblings, even that, you know, if we're thinking about what's the best care, not necessarily sometimes what we want, but what would be best. And sometimes it does mean, you know, in a different facility that has more capabilities than we have at home. And sometimes you do have to do that. And we've explored those things as well. But bringing my mother here at that time, which we had the pandemic was not in our view at all, but it wound up being the best thing because she could not live alone anymore. She either had to go somewhere or she had to come to live with one of us. So we were in that place of, it's going to be one of the two. She certainly could not live alone, but yeah, just to support, you know, what you both have said, you know, sometimes you make that decision of having to go to a facility. And those are the reasons why. But I think families are just trying to figure out, you know, what's going to be best for that family. And as a hospital practitioner and in chaplaincy in the hospital, you help people kind of walk through those hard decisions too.
Right. As a nurse, I've seen it myself.
Oh yeah.
I remember being in nursing school, and I had worked at a nursing home twice. And as a nursing student, you're not really too much hands-on, but in this particular situation, they just let us do a lot more than they probably should have. But walking through the responsibilities of a caretaker and the responsibilities of rehabilitation centers and long-term care homes, the experience is as good as the staff and the families involved. Every family's dynamic is completely different. Auntie Lisa, you had a situation where you said absolutely not. My mom is not going into a nursing home. She's not being taken care of by anybody but me. And that was feasible for your situation. Liana, you needed some extra help as far as, just because he was a man who was bigger than you physically, you just couldn't do it. He might have been in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
At the end where you really couldn't give him the support and the physical support that he needed. And so it just depends on everybody's situation is different. Everybody's dynamic is different. Everybody's level of care can be different. Some people aren't as dedicated to their families as you ladies are. And so they have no problem putting their family in an assisted living home or a nursing home or hospice care because they simply do not have the desire to take care of these ones.
Yeah.
So you ladies obviously care very deeply about your family and your family members to the point where you are willing to make those sacrifices and willing to be uncomfortable and willing to make those difficult decisions for your loved ones. And a lot of times that's not the case for a lot of people. Some people are just like, you know what, I have too much going on. I'm married, I have kids, I have my own issues, and I just can't do this. They just don't have the capacity to do that. But you ladies have made a lot of sacrifices, and you were so strong in doing those and making those sacrifices for your family. So I'm curious to know what your everyday life looked like. You know, walking day by day by day. You could say like the grand scheme of things, this is what happened, this is what happened, you know, fast forward 2 months later and this is what happened. But like every single day, what did your schedule look like? What help did you receive from other people? What difficulties that you struggled with that people may not know about being a caretaker for, you know, a loved one that is terminally ill, or you yourself that are going through healthcare struggles? What does that look like day to day for you guys?
Go ahead, lady. I need to speak into this because she has a very unique situation, because not only has she been a caregiver of others, but she's now caregiving for herself.
Well, let me just say this, you know, from my mom, and I just want to add this. My mom did had several stays in rehab because she was a lower limb amputation of one of her legs. And so, but she was such a strong woman. I'm telling you, got that prosthetic and she was walking with it. And she was 81. She was a few weeks shy of her 82nd birthday when she passed. She was strong. And I used to go, oh my God, I can't believe how strong. So she did. There are times when you do have to use those facilities. I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear that I'm not against those when needed for what you need it for. But it's all based on what you need it for and how you make it work. Because my brother and sister lived at home. So let's get it together. Plus she had an aide coming in, and then I would go there and I would handle business. I think as far as what a day looks like for me in terms of, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2016. I really haven't had a chance to, I'm still trying to understand it, but from 2016, my mom was really, you know, going through a lot. She had several stays in the hospital where they thought that she wasn't going to make it at times, and she kept, you know, she was here. And so my focus was not on myself, it was on her. And so now I have more time to think about it and to speak up for my situation. I'm on a medication that is over $7,000 every 6 weeks. I get it. Monday, I get an infusion. It's to slow down the progression of the disease. And I don't want to stay on this medication, and I want to get off of it. I am believing God to completely heal me. I'm working back with my personal trainer. I'm in occupational therapy and physical therapy. I have a frozen shoulder right now. My right hand is very weak, but my left hand could probably knock somebody out. Little joke, y'all can laugh at that. And so it's all about your mindset and what I've decided to do. I believe, like Lisa said in the beginning, everything that we are afflicted with is not for us, it's for someone else. I truly believe that. I truly believe that because God trusts me in this situation, in this trial, because he knows that my faith is in him and I'm focusing on him, not my circumstance. And I know that there are people that need hope and have no hope. There are people that are ready to give up, younger than myself. And so as a result, when I had a back surgery I shouldn't have had. I have screws and rods on my back. The problems I was having was because of MS that I didn't know that I had. So I ended up having screws and rods, had some discs taken out, which was wrong. And I shouldn't have done that. So misdiagnosis. eventually diagnosed 4 years later. That was 2012, and in 2016 diagnosed. So while I was home going through rehab, I was writing poetry that I started writing poetry when I was 7 years old. So next thing you know, I had all these poems and I was like, oh my God, I got to write a book. And I wanted to write this book and dedicate it to the ones that I love, you know, especially my mom while she was still here. And I had an opportunity to do that. So I'm so great at it. So for me, still trying, and in dealing with my affliction and trying to understand what I'm dealing with being home, the Lord was speaking to my heart and in and through me. And then I ended up writing this book. So I'll just show you real quick. Angel's Heart, Guided by Light. So Angels, my middle name is Angel. The title, the Lord gave it to me a few years before I even published the book. Angel's Heart, my heart, guided by light. And I would not, that was the title. I had the title 3 years before the book was published. And I put all these poems and then ended up writing a play called Life is Poetic. It's a 1 hour, and I use millennials and myself, and we have monologues and scripts and to speak about MS. If you see the play, you'll get a clear understanding of what it is. And I did a show for some people that I'm part of a group, MS Finest, which is a group of people that have multiple sclerosis. And some in wheelchairs, some in scooters, some in walkers, some with no presentation. And when they saw the play, there were people, they were crying because I was telling their story. And unless you're in the story, you don't really understand the pain. Yeah. And so my goal is to help to bring support to those people. And over COVID, I established my own nonprofit, Angels Heart for Hope Foundation, Inc., to bring awareness to multiple sclerosis, to provide scholarship for parents that have MS that suddenly can't work anymore and their children are going to college. That happened to me. I worked on Wall Street for almost 30 years, and then suddenly I went from 6 figures to almost zero, and my son's going to college. And I'm like, what's happening? I wish I had someone that was there to help me from that standpoint. Yeah. And so now I want to do that. I want to give the child that has MS funds to help assist them going to college. So I want to be an advocate and provide housing. So all of this is therapeutic for me. Yeah. It's also helping somebody else. The book was therapeutic for me. It's beautiful, inspirational poems that will encourage your heart. There's stuff in there for men, women, children, ancestry, love, transformation. It is a beautiful book of poetry that the Lord gave to me. And I work part-time at York College, so with the youth. And I am a producer of radio shows. So I produce radio shows. I have my own show for a time. And I don't stop. Lisa will tell you I don't stop. We cannot be counted out. Now that I'm among the disabled population, don't count us out. Yeah. Because I still shake a leg. Listen, I'm weak on my entire right side, but I still show up. I work out with a personal trainer twice a week. I am fighting. A year from now, I know I'm going to be in a better place. I have to be careful because any little thing can cause you to fall suddenly. Yeah. But I am so determined. And I know people watch me. People have been watching me my whole life. So that's okay. As God reveals my healing, they're going to know I never wavered. I don't look to the left or to the right. If I tell you some of the stuff that I'm dealing with, even on a personal level, outside of MS, but I have to focus on God and trust Him. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but He will deliver us out of them all. So I am so, it's your mindset and purpose. I can't, that's what it is. I'm sorry. I get very riled up. So I'm gonna calm down.
It's okay, honey. It's okay. It's okay. You got a great testimony, sweetheart.
I think it's amazing that you've been through so much and you for your whole life you've had to take care of others and you haven't stopped. Like you haven't stopped, not missed a beat. You haven't done anything but kept moving forward. So that is, if I know you're a self-motivator. If nobody's gonna pat you on the back, you're gonna pat yourself on the back and be like, I'm good, I'm moving. But let us tell you that is amazing. The fact that you have a diagnosis yourself, not only were you thinking of other people and had loss and disappointments and things of that nature, but you have your own issues, your own health issues, and you still find enough faith, enough motivation, enough determination that you're going to keep pushing forward, and not just keep pushing forward, but encourage other people.
Yes.
Being motivational and being a speaker and encouraging the youth. That's amazing, and you need to be so proud of yourself.
Yes.
Moving forward and pushing the way that you do.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things
God be the glory. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yes, I'm super proud of her. I've seen her journey all this time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that come to mind when I think about Sharonda, you're married.
Mm-hmm.
So Lee, just like I know that your journey has had a great impact on your son, and Sharonda, I know you have two beautiful children, and you have to travel abroad to be a chaplain in the military, and you have a husband. So can you kind of help us to walk through, just you don't have to like bare your soul, girl, unless you want to. But like, what impact has you caring for your mom have had on your marriage? And I know your husband, I know he's a great guy, but it's still a sacrifice, not only to you personally, having to give up some of the things that you want to do, but you also have to consider what your husband is giving up. The interference, if you will, in your marriage relationship. Can you talk to us about that, sweetie?
Yeah. So we've been married 20 years, I think, in June. Yeah. And prior to my mother coming, I did have enough wisdom just because of the nature of my work as a chaplain in hospital and military. You know about planning. So we had a family meeting with myself and my children and my husband, just preparing like, hey, this is what we're looking at doing, and just having the conversation with them about the sacrifices that were to come. And to be honest, I didn't know all of those sacrifices, like how to name them per se, but I knew they would come. So I'm like, prepare yourself, people, and sure enough, once the rubber hit the road, the sacrifices started to come. And they came in the ways of, you mentioned about my work. Well, my mother came in February, March, we have a pandemic. As you all watch television and you saw that military unit serving the state of Georgia, that was my unit. And I had the beautiful job to go across the state of Georgia to many, many cities and serving my soldiers as we served our local community, which was hospitals, nursing homes. So I immediately was pulled away from my home for about a month's time.
Wow.
So it was very challenging, where I had to request not to leave and be off site. So I had to come back and forth every day. But my family was very supportive in that when I was gone, because it was a pandemic, how God works, everyone was already home. So it did work out. But it is stressful, because if I'm away, then they know that I'm looking at them like, so who's gonna make grandma's breakfast tomorrow?
That's right.
And my mother's in a situation where, because of the memory loss, you do lose memory of those basic things.
Wow.
Basic function of a kitchen, to turn on a stove, to turn on a microwave, to remember how to make an egg. Very simple things, but you start to lose those simple functions. And then she has chronic back pain, so she can stand about a minute. Tops. So that means she can't stand at a stove to cook. So someone is always doing those things, cooking, cleaning, all of that. So the stress certainly has come, because she's been here about a year. But because thankfully my husband is a man of faith, we do tackle most things with prayer, where I'm like, okay, I see this is becoming overwhelming. What do we need to pray about? And then my children, where they're like, I don't want to, I don't want to stay home and do so-and-so, grandma. I'm like, you're 17 or you're 15, that's fine, we'll work it out. But even them, they are very helpful. So I think we've been able to overcome a lot of the challenges just having the conversations beforehand and being prepared. But it certainly sometimes causes a little friction. We are actually in the process of, my mother may go back to New Jersey with my sister.
Okay.
And that initially was the plan. But for various reasons, my sister was unable to do that immediately. So I had to do it. And I think a lot of it is her mental stability and happiness because she's very familiar with New Jersey. I've been in Georgia for 27 years, but my family has not. And by family, I mean my broad family, siblings and mother. So she's been in New Jersey for 60 years, just about.
Yeah.
So it's been a challenge, her being here and getting adjusted, and all of her memories are there. So we're trying to help support that. But in that move, that was a tension between my husband and I when he was like, okay, when are the siblings stepping up? Because the conversation was, we're all taking our part, and that to him was not happening. And I felt like I was in a situation where I was like, listen, I'm very, like Lisa, I am very upfront. And I'm very strong personality. And I don't like things to be confused. So I'm like, listen, you're putting me in this situation and this is how I feel. Why are you doing that? And now you are forcing me to make these decisions. Why would you do that? And by having just those hard, difficult conversations, it was like, okay, you're right. And we got to figure something out. So I did have to have some hard conversations with my siblings. But my husband and I we were able to work through those difficult times because I clearly expressed how I felt and the difficult position I felt he was putting me in. So we came to an agreement where it's like, let's openly have conversations with my siblings, and we just have to lay on the table, what are we willing to do and how do we want to see that happen? Prior to my mother coming, something you did not know is years before, we also cared for my mother-in-law. And she passed about 4 years ago. So then my children were much younger when my mother-in-law lived with me. And my husband's from another country. My husband's from Africa. So there is a very different dynamic behind caring of a parent in that culture versus that. And there were times where I was like, hey, bro, I need you to remember what I had to go through when we took care of your mama. And now it's my turn. So and I think we are still working through it, quite frankly. It's not like we've arrived. So the tension is that sometimes he's frustrated. Or he's tired because I lean on him. That's all I have here. Of course, I have an extended family, you all at church, but I don't have any family in the state of Georgia or any neighboring state. My nearest next relative is North Carolina. So when I need to lean on someone, it's typically my husband and my children. And they make a lot of sacrifices, but it was frustrating where he was like, all right, we don't get a break. What does that mean look like? And we just had to talk through it and just ask him, hey, if you can be more patient, this is the timeline that we have once I pulled my siblings in. And we just had to talk about what my husband was comfortable with doing and what he wasn't anymore. And, just lay it out and try to work through it. Again, being upfront was most helpful. In helping him deal with his frustration, and then being honest with, well, this is what I can do, and this is what's going to happen. Are you able to work with that? And again, it's because of the spirit of God in the man, I'm sure of. He was very willing and very accommodating, and my children as well. So it certainly is challenging. We have feuds and frustrations. Time is one of the things that's frustrating. Intimacy certainly becomes a frustration because he's like, she's always there, which is true. If I'm relaxing in the living room, he doesn't want to cuddle. In my mind, I'm like, that's just my mama. But for him, as a man, he's like, I guess I'll just go in my room. And I'm like, where are you going? I thought we were watching this together. So intimacy for him is a struggle in the presence of. And it's just uncomfortable. I would assume, in front of your mother-in-law, even if you were just cuddling on a couch, there's certainly a limit to it, but he's just not comfortable. So it has brought up something to the surface. But again, I'm just like, okay, and counseling, I do tons of that. I'm like, well, let's talk about it and see how we best can work through it. But those are some of the things: frustrations with intimacy, frustrations with time, frustrations with like, okay, I thought other folks were getting in and they're not. And we just have to openly and honestly talk through them. And I think that's how we're working through it quite peaceably, I will say. It's not perfect, but we can lovingly get through it because we lay it all on the table, honestly share what we feel and what we want, and then we figure out how to attack that. And just one other thing I was going to add, Lisa, when you're talking, God is also sovereign, and I'm sure all of you know that. My sister was diagnosed with MS. And she lived with MS for years. I'm the youngest, so they like to shield us, even though I was an adult. But my oldest sister lived with MS for, my God, probably 20 years. And that was before I got full knowledge of it. So you are just even more of a testimony about that disease and how it is continuing to be conquered, but to encourage you, man, it can and will be done, because I had to live through that as well. With my sister. But that's how we work through those frustrations. They certainly come, and the best way is we're honest about them, honest about how we feel, and then we just prayerfully try to attack it, because I don't know no other way. But they come. I thought I was prepping us, and then, like I said, that rubber hit that road, honey, that car started skirting all over the place. We just had to figure out how to drive it right. You know what I'm saying? Put some snow tires and some chains on that thing. And we got it to level out. And that's where we are with it, because the challenges continue to come. My daughter's graduating this year. So, as you're planning for all those things, you think about even attending sports. I mean, I go a lot without my mother. She doesn't like to be out. So you make a full transition in your life where my husband and I can't attend as many games as we would like to together anymore. Because we used to do tons of that together, but one of us is willing to typically kind of stay behind and the other go. So he's made a lot of sacrifices. And that's what I would say that you mentioned earlier about how would you define caregiving, and I would say sacrifice. But I'm blessed in that he's willing to do that. He works with me really well. We've become a great team on it. Not that challenges don't come, but we just trying to prayerfully work through them all. But those are some of his challenges, though.
I have a question for you, ladies. It could come from a different angle. And I remember when my father was sick with ALS. I would go visit him. I had to help care for him, and he's a man. Rihanna, you had your dad. And when he was really couldn't. He had no strength. I had to help him. I was like, oh God. I was like going into panic mode because I had to help him into the bathroom and stuff. And then I was like, he needed to take a shower, and so my father was like very proud, and he was always very self-sufficient and so forth. So I was like, oh God, I'm going to have to help him into the shower and take all his clothes off. And how's that going to make him feel? And how's that going to make me feel? The intimate things like that, like the dignity part of it. And so for my father, he was just like, he was okay with just going down to his underwear. That's how far he would go. And I would give him that respect, and I would take him, put him in the shower, and I would walk away and let him do the rest. So how do you ladies deal with the hard things of having to deal with, parents that lose their ability to even bathe themselves or use the bathroom on their own, and how do you overcome that, and having a dad that, you may have to wash his private parts and stuff. This is real stuff.
Your dad probably, towards the end, you had to do things like that. So how did that look for you?
Yeah. So my father was very proud, like you said, very self-sufficient, and even cared for and looked after others. And so this was just a situation that was for him very hard for him to kind of accept. We had to be creative. My father wouldn't want me to, he wouldn't want me to do certain things. There are other things that I just had to help him do. Like I had to help transfer him from bed to bedside commode. And we had a whole thing. I mean, honestly, I feel like if anybody were watching, they would be like, I mean, we would time it so that I'm like, okay, Daddy, I'm going to I was probably doing it all wrong. Daddy, I'm going to pull you up. Okay, when I do this, I'm going to twist your hip. You pull down. Like,
Yep.
I mean, it was, you do all these types of things to try to get through it. And honestly, by grace, we didn't, he didn't fall in the, we made it through. But when I talked to the professionals, they would say, I can't believe you did that. Don't ever do that again.
Bad body mechanic. Don't do it.
I know. But yeah, it's very hard.
difficult.
Yeah. So like every day, I know that you say he was in hospice, right?
Yes, from much of the time he was in hospice. For like 4 months, he was in hospice.
Okay. And then you said some days he would be with you, and then some days he would be in hospice. So like, how did that look like? Was it like consecutive days, or was it like every other day?
Well, so when I was living with him and trying to help him before we ever made the inpatient hospice decision, we were resident, outpatient hospice. So we had a caregiver come. But I was stepping in the gap, and so were some other family members. And my dad just wasn't doing well. He was kind of declining. So we made the decision to move him to a facility, and he really bounced back. I mean, his appetite returned. His voice, you could hear it strong. And so I wanted him to be able to come home for like retreat. Like, Daddy, we're going to order some ribs. We're going to watch football,
Yeah.
But we really, so it was just a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 times, just intermittent, that he came and stayed with me.
Hey, Lisa, how did you deal with Daddy? I call her father Daddy because I lived with him and he was Daddy to me as well. How did you deal with Daddy, with being a man and want to have his privacy and stuff like that? And Mommy was probably easier because she was a woman, but you had to take care of your dad too.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Honestly, Daddy was actually easier because he was able to do a little bit more. When it got to the point where he was really, really, when he was coming to the end time, he was in the hospital. He passed in the hospital. So I had more of that experience with Mommy, similar to Liana, having to pick up out. Now me, I got screws and rods in my back, and here I am trying to pick up, and I'm doing it, and I'm trying to give directions to Anthony and Maria. My brother's pulling her up like this. I said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You're doing it wrong." And so then I would watch the aid and watch what they did, and I would try to take, I would actually tell them, show us how to do it. Show us how to do it.
Yeah.
And so, Maria and Anthony did it most of the time. I definitely would go and pitch in, and even sometimes to change her, because she had to end up with diapers, and it was difficult at first for my mom to even want to get like accessorized, because I'm the only one that drives, right? No one else has a car, no one else drives. And I said, Mommy, you have to go to the doctor. You have to get these things, because when you want to go somewhere, when you want to do something, you always call me, and I'm not always available. That's not fair to me.
Yeah. Get
the accessorized to these appointments. So she did do that, and that was good. And like I said, we would all kind of pitch in and help her from the bed to the commode in the bathroom. She didn't even want the commode at first. She wanted to go, because the bathroom was right next to her. She wanted to get up and go into the bathroom. But then one time she went in there and she fell. And I'm like, okay, you can't do that anymore. Yep. So sometimes it's like, thank God she didn't, fall and bust her head open or anything. But these are the things that, listen, this is safety first. So this is, and if you don't get out the bed by yourself, you would try that. Maria's right there, call her. I got a baby monitor and hooked it up. So my brother or my sister, whoever was on duty at the time, could hear whatever was going on in the room.
That's a
so
good idea.
You come up with these creative ways to do things, because in essence, they become the child and you become the parent.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say.
You hear that, Alexis? You better get ready.
Get ready, Alexis.
I told you I would. You better be lucky I'm a nurse.
I know. So, ladies, as we get ready to close this episode out, can you just briefly talk about, I'll start with Sharonda. Can you talk about what advice would you give to somebody that's caring for a parent that has memory issues?
Yeah, so education is key. I utilized a book. It's called The 360-Hour Day. There are so many resources that are out there from like Alzheimer's.com. And then they will give you resources in your specific community. So don't be afraid to, it's a worldwide organization, but they help you trim it down to right where you are. And then sit down with your families and have those hard conversations. Jokingly brought Alexis in, but because of that, I have had a conversation with my children, even at 17 and 15, get things in your will, just start focusing on that planning, because those things come. You want to have someone, Alexis can speak to this, an advocate for your health care. You can do a primary advocate, and every state should have one. So look at those things, because as parents start to decline and they can't make decisions, you can make some of those decisions ahead of time. And then you won't have the stress of what do I do? Now you go back to those decisions that you all were able to make together when everyone was clear and able to do it. So those are kind of some of my tools. Is one, educate yourself on whatever it is that you're dealing with. When my family, my brother-in-law and my sister's children were dealing with MS, we had to educate ourselves on that. And then utilize resources that are available. Plan as much as you can. We've all heard that if you don't plan for something, then you plan to fail. You can't plan for every little thing, but as much as you can plan for, there are so many resources out there now. Just do that. So those are kind of three things I would say.
Okay. How about you, Liana?
I would say make self-care a priority. I would say make sure to tend to your emotional needs. Ask for help. People are willing. They are willing. They don't know maybe what to do best, but you can, but accept help, ask for help. And third, I went to a counselor the entire time I was caring for my dad. I had weekly appointments, and her main focus was making me accountable for how I was caring for myself. So that would be my advice.
That's good.
Okay, how about you, Lee?
I would say honestly, definitely ask for help, because my situation is, I have good days and bad days. Most of the time it's good. I would say, even when I'm having a little bit of a challenge, sometimes my legs become heavy and I need to just stay home. But for this week, I ended up walking without I have a brace that I use and a cane. And this week I went out without using my brace. I just used the cane. So ask for help.
Ladies, I want to ask one more thing before we close. What can we do to support you guys as your community? What can we do? How can we reach out and just lend a helping hand to make sure that you guys are doing okay?
Liana, you're speaking to that, sweetie?
Yeah, I think it's really, I think that we're all in such different places. And for me, my circle, my friends, my church family, people just reached out, offered, and just to listen, like to actually just, let you talk through stuff. The best help I got was sometimes talking through things. It helped me make decisions. It helped me figure out how to approach care for my dad, how to solve dilemmas. And so that was a very big support in my life. And I think anytime you can just offer to be a listening ear and help someone talk through things, you're really being there for them.
Great. How about you, Sharonda?
Yeah, just pray and check in on caregivers periodically. Just call them, do something. If it comes to your mind, do it. And I would say that those things are helpful, because sometimes folks ask, how can you help? And you're like, I don't even know where to start. So if it gets laid on your heart, just do it.
That's good.
Just keep us in prayer, because we're in transition. So those two things,
Okay, Lisa, what you gonna? How can we help you? How can we serve you in a better way and be there for you?
Well, for me personally, don't count me out, because I still listen. I want to go out. I need to go out and pray for me, because I'm believing God for a husband. Okay, so I'm going to keep it 1,000 right now. I am believing God for a husband, and not someone that's broken down, because no. Because you might need to carry me one day. So he could be strong, and he could be a little younger. That's fine. I could cook. So I got cable. might have to help me clean a little bit because I can't be, you know what I mean, lifting certain things. But I'm just saying.
I'm just
listen,
that's
the truth. Listen, I believe God is keeping me. I'm like, God is preserving me for my husband.
Amen.
That's right, girl.
And you know what? The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come.
That's right.
So, just pray for me as I pray for you.
And I'm going to post all of that information about Lisa's foundation on our page, our YouTube page. And so you'll have access to all of that for those that you are watching. If you want to reach out to any of these ladies for support, or you just need extra encouragement, you can send us a message and we can definitely connect you to them. But I just want to thank you ladies for joining us here on Sistah Talks. You taught me a lot. You've caused me to have a lot to think about. And I'm certain that Alexis has a lot to think about. You've even encouraged me, because if I look at you and I see that you can do it when the time comes for me to have to be a caregiver of somebody else, I know that I'll be able to do it because I see the strength that God has given each of you to do it as well. And Alexis, you too, because one thing, Shawn, that you said that I never even heard about was designating an advocate that would speak on your behalf within the family. Absolutely. And I never even thought about that. That's so very, very important. When you
got a lot to talk about.
I was about to say, Alexis, pull her in, use all of your skills.
Y'all get over.
Yeah. And they're hard conversations. Parents don't like to have them, but you just have to push. You just have to push. And it's so much better in the long run.
Yes. Well, ladies, thank you.
I have a trust already. I have a trust.
All right, now. Thank you for joining us on Sistah Talks. We love you very much.
Thanks for having me.
To air because I know
meeting you guys.
Will be blessed.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I love you, ladies.
Awesome. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Sistah Talks.
We cannot begin to express the gratitude and appreciation for all of your love and all of your support that you've given us so far.
If you've enjoyed this program, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page. And if you feel so inclined, you can go ahead and support this show by clicking on the link below and giving any gift that you decide.
You can also follow us on Instagram and also on Facebook, Sistah Talks, and also hashtag Sisters Let's Talk for anything that is linked to us.
Like it and share it to all your friends, ladies. We love you and thank you. And we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.